Stay tuned now for the Racing for Heroes radio show with host Brett Morash on 1460 WVOX.
All right. Hey, how is everyone doing out there in Racing for Heroes land today? Here we are on 1460 AM on a relatively dreary day up here in New York, but I'm hoping it's sunny and dry where you are so you can drive fast and turn up the tunes on the radio. So here today we have two amazing guests. The one will be coming on at about 11:15 is Eli Cronbach, formerly U.S. Coast Guard rescue swimmer and recently retired firefighter, and is making a big difference in the racing world on the West Coast. Our second person, our first guest is Command Sergeant Major Gretchen Evans, who is one of the five-person team called Team Unbroken, which will be competing, hopefully, on Bear Grylls' World's Toughest Race. And I would like to start off by saying that Command Sergeant Major Evans is tough as nails. If you look in the dictionary next to the word grit, you will see a little picture of her there as the example. So she is amazing. And Command Sergeant Major, are you on the line?
Yes, sir, I am.
All right. Well, welcome aboard. I'm so happy to have you here. So thanks for being on.
Oh, it's absolutely my pleasure.
Yeah, and so Command Sergeant Major, I know we've talked a couple times, and I think that I even put on LinkedIn a little earlier that we've had some pretty amazing guests here. I mean, last week we had Dan Short, owner of Phantom Works, but also former Apache pilot and former Green Beret. But you actually have a pretty amazing military career, and if you could just tell us a little bit about it. Especially, I heard you fought against the Red Brigade in Italy, so I'd love to hear more about that.
Yes. Okay. So I came in the Army at 19. I was independently, financially independent at that age. I had lost both my parents when I was in junior high school. But so I went into the military with the original intention of spending, 4 years getting the GI Bill and getting out and continuing with my college education. But what I found instead was a passion and a mission and a family in and of itself. And so I don't know if the Army found me or I found the Army, but it was a match made in heaven. So I went into the intelligence right out of the bat. I was an intel analyst and then went into counterintelligence.
Wow.
As an agent. And part of the criteria to be an agent was to go to language school and learn at least one foreign language. And so I did that. And then I served probably 5 or 6 years in the intel community, mostly overseas, because that's where all the counterintelligence stuff has to happen. And then I was approached by a new organization that had just been established that was really the intel part of some of the, I would say, special operation groups like Task Force 160 and like Delta Force. And we were supposed to be the ones that would go in before and gather information. And I really think the reason that they recruited me was that even at 25, I looked like I was 19. I had red hair and freckles. I could pass as Opie Taylor. So I looked like a pretty non-threatening person. I didn't look like a spy, 5'3", 100 pounds. So, there's no way I think anybody was going to think I was doing anything undercover. So
it's like a spy. You're like sneaking in there, Command Sergeant Major. So it was wonderful. Great organization, wonderful people. And then it was time to come back into the Green Army, and I did. And then I served out the rest of my 27 years until I was wounded in Afghanistan. I was out visiting troops. We were 90 days from coming home, and that can be a very dangerous time in a deployment because troops have a tendency to start thinking about going home. And they're not. I was just going around saying, hey, keep your head on a swivel. We're almost done here, but we're still in a very dangerous place. And when I landed at a FOB, we started taking in mortar fire, and a round landed very close to where I was standing before I could get myself into the bunkers, which resulted in the loss of my hearing and a traumatic brain injury and a bunch of pieces of shrapnel, all kinds of places. Oh, wow.
It was devastating. I went for 27 years. I was 46. Still had no intentions of retiring. I had no plan B at that point. And so I, like many of our veterans, I kind of had to reinvent myself. I was not a sergeant major anymore. I wasn't in the Army anymore. And, it's a struggle at best. But I think I had some wisdom on my side, and I had a great support system, and I think I had some grit. I had been put in some tough situations, and so I just had to play the new hand I had been dealt through these injuries. And my new passion became to advocate for veterans who maybe had gone through some of the same things I had their careers ripped from them, who were having to deal with injuries that somehow disqualified them to have jobs or positions in life or doing things they thought they could do.
Yeah,
and
sure.
So I took on the mission to say that, disability doesn't mean disqualification.
Right.
And I did not change my goals to fit my disabilities. I had my disabilities fit my goals.
That's amazing.
And yeah, so
I'm going to write that down.
So go ahead. Team Unbroken kind of formed out of that passion and purpose and that grit attitude.
That's amazing. And so, I mean, obviously, and I know you're a little older than when you left the military. I mean, what you're doing is just absolutely at the top tier of adventure racing. So tell us about Team Unbroken and like what adventure racing is all about, and of course, what's coming up.
Yeah, it was a funny story. So the Eco Challenge is like the granddaddy of all adventure racing, and it's one of the most arduous things. They say that it makes an Ironman look like a church picnic, and it's 10 days of absolute craziness. If anybody who's watched it on Amazon, it's just crazy. So when I first applied to take a team of disabled people to compete, I was told no. In fact, I was told no 3 times. Okay, and finally, I convinced them to let us come. And they kept saying to me, "We're afraid you're going to get hurt." And my line was, "We've already been hurt."
Right, you can't blow you up more, right?
I got a teammate that was blown up by an IED.
Yeah.
I took a rocket round, and I said, "We've already been hurt. We're not." But anyway, once we got accepted and we showed up in Fiji, They really were enlightened, I would say. They watched us train and go through. We had a week of certifications before the course actually started, the race started. And they watched how we operated with our disabilities.
Wow. And
probably the most pronounced one was my deafness, because if I can't see your face, I can't understand you. I lip read, okay?
Sure.
And so you're in the jungle at night, or you're on ropes where you don't have line of sight. And they watched how we learned to do tugs to communicate.
Wow.
And they were just fascinated by it. And it changed their whole perspective. Both Mark Burnett and Bear Grylls, as you know, are veterans.
Yep.
But they had not been exposed to a team that had such severe disabilities. In fact, we were the first team ever, that total team that had everybody on the team was disabled. And they just fell in love with us. And so did the Amazon people. And so we ended up being one of the 10 featured teams on the Amazon series. And then they asked, and so our mission wasn't just about the race. Our mission was to be an encourager for veterans out there who have disabilities, or their family members, or even people in general, to say, again, don't let this stop you from doing what you want and being who you are.
Yeah.
Okay. This should not stop you from doing it. And we thought if we could just set a good example of overcoming our injuries, maybe we can encourage some people to whatever their toughest race in their life is. It could be getting up off the couch and mowing the lawn. It could be spending more time with their family. It could be, I don't know what it is. It doesn't have to be this crazy 10-day race, It could be anything. And I just want to, I feel like I have a moral and ethical obligation as a service member, as a veteran, to help my fellow veterans say, look, okay, just because you've been kicked to the curb or your life took a dramatic change, don't let that define you.
For sure. And, Gretchen, I really do feel that, and as you probably would believe, is that as a command sergeant major, you really have that covenant of leadership to people. And I think you're still espousing that in the way that you're approaching the racing. Yeah.
So I think one of the things I learned as I was going through the ranks in the military was, and I think you and I talked about this earlier, was when I came in 1979, my leaders were Vietnam veterans.
Yep.
Who were battle-hardened soldiers, okay, and they were kind of a little nonsense in the sense that they knew what war was like, and they had an obligation as senior leaders to ensure that we, as newbies, knew what we were doing. But they also taught me to be able to recognize strengths in other people that maybe they didn't even see for themselves. And I think that's a great leadership talent to have, to be able to look at someone and say, man, you would make the best point man, and you don't know that, but I can see it in you because I know what I'm looking for. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that is important because, even in my career, I still talk about when I, went active duty in 93, the sort of the last of the Vietnam folks were just kind of starting to tail off. And I learned a lot from them because of their perspective of having been at the tip of the spear. It was sort of at the, right after the Cold War, but of course pre 9/11. And I think today we still have a lot of combat veterans that are in the military, and I'm hopeful that the new generation of kids that are joining the military out of high school, are getting that same kind of training that you got back in 1979. So I'm inspired by that.
Yeah, and so the whole point in Team Unbroken is we are hopefully going to compete in Patagonia in 2021, which is where the next race is. But in the interim, we'll be doing races throughout the United States, smaller races.
Yeah.
And just to hone in our skills, and also we're looking for platforms where we can talk about what it really means to, you can talk about grit, and you can talk about resiliency, and you can talk about all these things. But when you can give I always say a picture is worth 1,000 words, and there's some truth to that. You can say, look, you have it within you. You're the same person you were before you got hurt or before whatever trauma you went through. That same person is still inside of you. You might look different on the outside, and maybe you might be missing a limb, or you've got a traumatic brain injury, or you have PTSD or whatever, but your heart is still there.
That's right.
And that's where grit comes from, is that heart.
Absolutely.
And you just got to get past just outwardly what looks like what might be broken. It's really not broken.
Yeah.
Okay, it's really still in there. And if we can inspire people to reach deep inside and find that grit, or talk about how we get it, because you can establish grit within yourself if you don't have it. You can practice things that will come to you and say, man, I know I can conquer that because I've done it before. I've got it within me to do that.
Yeah. And Command Sergeant Major, before we switch real briefly, if people are interested in Team Unbroken and supporting you, A, where do they look? And B, what do you need to get to Patagonia in 30 seconds or less?
We're going to cross the finish line in Patagonia.
Yeah.
Come hell or high water, and if we have to eat spleen, we're going to cross that finish line in Patagonia. And we want everybody to stand up their living room and say, yes, Team Unbroken made it. And I want everybody to know that we're representing all of you out there and everything that we do.
Awesome. All right. And again, Command Sergeant Major Evans, everything you're doing and the rest of Team Unbroken, I'm super appreciative. So thank you for being on the show, and as we kind of switch to our next guest. So thanks.
Thank you, sir. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
All right. Thanks so much. All right, everyone. That was Command Sergeant Major Gretchen Evans. We're switching back to a member of the Sea Services next, Eli Cronbach. He is based out of California, recently retired as a firefighter in Napa, California. And as everyone knows, there's all the fires that are going out there. So, and even in the uniform of the Coast Guard, Eli was a rescue swimmer. So anytime you see the Coast Guard out there rescuing, he's the guy that I won't say is crazy enough, but has the intestinal fortitude to jump in that water and save folks. So I couldn't do it. So Eli, are you on the line?
Yes, sir. How are you doing this morning?
No. Hey, listen. Thank you for being here. How's the weather out in California today? If things better?
Yeah, we're finally getting a break. We actually have our classic coastal fog in this morning, so it's really helping everybody out.
Yeah, I think it extends all the way here to New Rochelle right now. The guys in the booth are bobbing their head up and down. It's pretty hazy here as well. So, hey, thanks for being on the show. And I wanted to talk about, let's start with the Coast Guard. Like, you're a California boy, I'm guessing, right? How did you get into the Coast Guard?
I think probably like a lot of folks that ended up joining the service, I was doing my thing. At the time, I was doing construction and enjoyed it, but kind of looked around me and realized I didn't want to be 50 years old and still banging nails, and I didn't have another plan, to be honest. So I went in, met with a recruiter. I was about 20 years old, I think, at the time, and said, I'm interested in joining the military. What are my choices? And he held up the brochure, and of course on that brochure was a picture of a guy jumping out of a helicopter. And I said, that's what I want to do. I want to do that.
That's amazing.
So he kind of laughed at me and said, well, of course, that's what everybody wants to do, but you do know that's the hardest job we have. And I said, I don't care. I don't mind hard work. That's what I want to do.
Good man.
So fast forward probably three plus years later, and I was in rescue swimmer school, and they warned me, day one, they warned me it's the hardest school that they have, and most people don't make it. I think it's averaging 60% or so washout rate.
It's high.
But, what I got out of that, not just the swimmer school, but also being in the Coast Guard, is a real belief in myself that there was nothing that was not attainable if you focus that internal energy, stay positive, and just keep embracing the suck and just push through it. You find that you find in yourself, and you learn that everyone has a capacity that they're not aware of, a capacity to keep moving and pushing forward through things. And that's the gift, I guess, if I had to say, that I got from the services, and I took out with it. And when I speak to other service members, that's a very common thread. They're like, I learned that I could really do pretty much anything I set my mind to. And that sets veterans and service members alike apart from the rest.
For sure. I mean, personally, like when I was transitioning from the military, just kind of thinking about you talking about that, I was like, I can do anything. And that's also part of the problem is that, I could see any job description to be like, I could totally, be an actuary. I could totally be the best janitor that company's ever seen, like whatever the spectrum was. And but you went into the fire department though, right? So tell us about, and I don't want to be lost. You just retired, right? Just in time for the fires. So tell us about being a firefighter.
Yeah, I did. I just turned in my retirement paperwork back in August, and kind of working through the process on that still. But that was a kind of a natural transition. I did 9 years in the Coast Guard, and at the time I was working as a flight paramedic.
Oh wow!
I went through the Coast Guard program, got my EMT license, and then kept going to night college, and ended up getting my paramedic license as well. So I had a super supportive flight surgeon at our base, and he allowed me to fly as a medic certified swimmer, which was
really cool,
almost unheard of. So I started looking around, and as much as I loved the military, had a new family, and was like, well, is this what I want to do? Can I do this for another 20 years? Because it's a pretty brutal job.
Oh, for sure.
And so I had an opportunity to transition out, and started testing with some fire departments, and was successful in getting hired. A lot of crossover in terms of skill sets. It wasn't a difficult challenge for me to transition skill sets wise. One of the experiences I had, and again, kind of translating that back to speaking with other veterans, is oftentimes we come out of the military, like I said, with a I can do anything mentality, and already pre-programmed to be part of teams. But we also come out operating sometimes at a different altitude than some of our folks around you. So there was definitely a transition period where I had to relearn what being a civilian was like. Had some bumps in the road. And all those bumps, if you can, again, push through them and just embrace it, they just make you stronger and they make you better.
Yeah, agree. Agree. I mean, as you know, they have 15 weeks of boot camp, but 1 week of transition back to being a civilian. So it is a challenge. So kind of moving on, Eli. I know you're a big deal in doing motorsports, and I don't say that lightly. But how did you get into motorsports? What are you doing now? And I know you're going to be working with one of our fantastic drivers, Adam Benaway, here in the future. I know we're kind of working on that on the side, but tell us about what's coming up, and of course. Also, the kind of the vision for Military Motorsports Network.
Yeah, for sure.
Lots of questions, I know.
I'll send you that T-shirt that says "I'm a big deal" when I am. All right.
It won't be Ron Burgundy. It'll be Eli on there.
Yeah, there you go. I got into motorsports. I've been a motorsports fan my entire life,
right.
and kind of transitioned from being a fan to wanting to do something more. And it's an interesting story because I didn't realize what I had done at the time. I mentioned a minute ago that, coming out of the military, operating at a different altitude and being used to kind of a different pace, and maybe even, if you want to call it that, a different risk threshold of
Sure.
being willing to put yourself out there. And about 8 years ago, realized that, it felt like there was something that was missing. There was a piece of my life that just wasn't right yet. And I didn't have a clear vision on what that was. So believe it or not, I went to my wife and I said, hey, honey, I got this idea, and it's not going to make any sense. It's not logical. It doesn't make any financial sense for us as a family. I said, but I want to build race cars and I want to start driving race cars. And gosh bless her soul, she's like, well, okay, that's not the worst thing you could have come and asked me for. So
that's a good wife right there, Eli.
Yeah, so
good woman.
Go forth and do it.
That's amazing.
So I didn't have any clue what I was doing at the time. I'd never been in a race car, and I reached out to a local organization. I should say, I reached out to a local branch of a national organization called National Autosports, or NASA, and there's regions throughout the entire country. Anybody can join. NASA has programs for teenage drivers, just learn how to do what they call their teenage car control clinic, where it makes you a safe teen driver, all the way to competition endurance motorsports racing.
That's amazing.
So I signed up to be a volunteer, actually, with some of the NASA endurance teams. And one of the great things that they do out here on the West Coast is the NASA championships are concluded at a 25-hour endurance race at Thunder Hill, California.
Oh, that's coming up, right? That's what you're doing with Adam, right?
No, the NASA Thunder Hill has been canceled this year due to crowd concerns. So we're going to be running a 14-hour endurance race with the Lucky Dog Racing League, which is another organization that is really focused out there on getting folks out on track, providing them opportunities. So went out, did a couple of volunteers. I started out really in the dirt, changing tires and washing windshields, and just kind of learning what it was about, and talking with the drivers, meeting the drivers and hearing their stories.
That's
and I'm
great.
like, yeah, this is it. I'm hooked. I'm all in.
Yeah, you bet, brother. Hey, we only got a few minutes left in the show, so.
Oh yeah, no worries.
Hey, listen, let me ask you a question though, kind of fun question. What was your most memorable racing experience?
Sure. Well, I'll talk a little faster. Yeah, absolutely. The
sound bites.
So I kept doing the NASA endurance thing. I eventually moved myself up to a team manager, and during one of the subsequent 25-hour races, we were running a 2-car team with Kreider Racing.
Oh, cool.
One of the engines in the car let go about midnight, and the car chief. So we had crew chiefs, and we had car chiefs, and we had the team manager. Car chief's like, that's it, I'm done, and he walked away. And as a veteran,
that's like in Talladega Nights when the driver walks away.
Yeah, I as a military guy, I'm like, oh heck no, I've got that never quit mentality. So we rallied the crews together, both teams, put a new motor in the car, and about 3 a.m. got the sucker back out on track.
That's amazing.
And ended up side by side with kind of a Le Mans Ford Racing tribute with the team, where both cars cross the finish line at the same time. So it was awesome. Yeah,
that's like in that movie Racing for Dogs, or the Ferrari, Ford versus Ferrari, like where they came across at the end.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
That's where the inspiration. Yeah, that's where the inspiration came from.
That's so amazing. I love it. I'm like, my heart's warm right now just even thinking about it. And then Eli, before I have to let you go, so I know you're building Service Motorsports Team. Tell me a little bit about that and where people can look when it's live. And obviously we'll cross promote from Racing for Heroes. Right.
So the Service Motorsports landing page is up. We're going to have the contacts page and stuff operating hopefully by tomorrow. And basically the mission of that team, we are not a nonprofit like yourself, but our goal as a team is to bring forward and campaign a racing team comprised exclusively of veterans, service members, and family and support folks that want to see an all-military team in racing. If you look out there right now, there's a lot of celebrities, a lot of big-name drivers, and they all want to put the patch on their car. But if you really dig deep down below, there are very few veterans and very few service members actually in the car, and we want to do that at a national level.
And thanks for doing that. And listen, I'm super excited. So, Eli, thank you again for being on the show. You're an amazing person. You're still doing amazing things, and I'm glad to have you as an ally of Racing for Heroes, and I'm looking forward to our going forward. So, thank you.
Yep. Last thing, keep an eye out for the Military Motorsports Network. It'll be coming live here shortly. We just bought the website, so that's going to be a clearinghouse for anybody in the services that want to find out about how they can get into racing.
All right. Well, thanks again, Eli. And that music does mean that it is the end of the show. So thank you, everyone. Take a look at what we're doing out there, www.racingforheroes.org. And I'll see you next week right here, same time, out here.
Just a little farther down the road. Little farther down the road. Traveling where no one dared to go. Got a dream to chase and it just won't wait. Just a little farther down the road.
With world and national